What just happened? This story was unbelievable. A martial arts champion learned the hard way that stillness is not weakness. But what do you think? Have you ever misjudged someone's strength based on their appearance? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We bring you powerful, mind-blowing stories every single day. And trust me, you won't want to miss tomorrow's special episode. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to see it. See you back here, same time tomorrow. MMA champion challenges a royal guard. What happens next will shock you. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Buckingham Palace as tourists gathered near the grand gates, cameras in hand, eager to capture the sight of the Queen's Guard standing in perfect formation. Among the sea of visitors, one figure stood out. Jason Carter, a 32-year-old six-time world champion in mixed martial arts, sauntered through the crowd with his entourage close behind. His championship belt, a gleaming testament to his dominance in the ring, hung over his shoulder as he moved with the unmistakable confidence of a man who had never doubted his own strength. Jason was no stranger to the spotlight. His name was synonymous with power, precision, and ruthless efficiency in the fighting world. Across Texas and Florida, his chain of elite MMA gyms had trained thousands, and his social media presence had amassed millions of followers, all eager to analyze his techniques. He was a fighter, a coach, and a man who had spent his life proving that skill, strategy, and relentless training could overcome any opponent. So when his eyes fell on the motionless figure of Royal Guard Daniel Foster, standing as still as a statue, a smirk crept onto his face. "Seriously?" Jason scoffed, loud enough for nearby tourists to hear. "This is supposed to be elite military training?" His entourage chuckled as he gestured toward the guard. "A real fighter doesn't just stand there. He moves, adapts, stays aware. That guy wouldn't last 30 seconds in a real fight." Foster didn't react. He remained motionless, eyes fixed forward, his ceremonial uniform immaculate, his posture unshaken. Jason's smirk widened. He had sparred with world-class fighters, men who had trained for years to react in the blink of an eye. Yet here stood a so-called elite soldier, rigid and unresponsive. It was almost laughable. "Hey, get a picture of me with the mannequin," this Jason called to one of his team members. He stepped beside Foster, mimicking his stance before shifting into an exaggerated fighting pose. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but a few onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. Some instinctively stepped back, sensing the tension rising. Unbeknownst to Jason, two figures watched from a distance, Colonel William Adams and Major Thomas Reynolds, both retired military officers. Their expressions remained neutral, but their eyes held the weight of men who had seen true combat. They had seen arrogance before, and they had seen how quickly it shattered when faced with reality. Colonel William Adams and Major Thomas Reynolds stood near the edge of the crowd, their sharp eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before them. They had spent decades in the military, leading operations where arrogance was a fatal flaw. Now they watched as Jason Carter, a man who built an empire on controlled combat, mocked a soldier trained for war. Jason turned back to his entourage, shaking his head. "I mean, come on, no stance, no defense, no awareness. You drop this guy in the ring, and he's out in one round, probably less." He rolled his shoulders, cracking his knuckles as if warming up for a demonstration. The crowd murmured, some shifting uncomfortably. A few tourists had already backed away, sensing that this was more than just a harmless display. Still, Daniel Foster remained frozen, his ceremonial uniform pristine, his breathing steady. His rifle rested at his side, his posture unshaken. He had been trained for moments like this, to endure, to ignore, to remain unaffected. But deep within his mind, something changed. The years of counterterrorism training, of surviving in war zones where a single mistake meant death, had already begun calculating. Foster wasn't just standing still. He was assessing. Jason stepped closer, now fully in performance mode. "Look at this guy," he said, addressing the growing crowd. "This is what happens when military training focuses on looking good instead of actually working." He snapped into a fighting stance, light on his feet, his championship instincts taking over. His movements were fluid, powerful, but they were predictable. Colonel Adams exhaled slowly, crossing his arms. "This idiot has no idea what he's messing with, does he?" he murmured. Major Reynolds gave a slight shake of his head. Nope, but he's about to find out. Jason's entourage chuckled as he demonstrated quick strikes, stopping just inches from Foster's face. The tension thickened, a pressure that even the bystanders could feel. Then Jason turned to his team and smirked. Bet you $50 I can make him move. The moment he said it, Foster's focus locked in. His years of training had drilled a simple truth into his mind. Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. The game was about to end, and Jason had no idea how much it was about to cost him. Jason Carter rolled his shoulders, his confidence unshaken. He had fought world-class strikers, grapplers, and champions from every combat sport imaginable. To him, this was just another demonstration, another moment to prove why martial artists like him were superior to military training. He took a deep breath and exhaled sharply, then shifted his weight, his instincts kicking in. "All right, let's settle this," he muttered under his breath. His entourage stepped back, cameras rolling. The crowd grew silent. Even those who had been entertained by his antics now sensed something was about to happen, something real. Jason's eyes locked onto Daniel Foster's feet. They were planted firmly, seemingly rigid, the stance of a man who wasn't prepared to move. A mistake, Jason thought. In the ring, balance and mobility were everything. If your opponent couldn't adjust to attacks, they were already beaten. He had seen it hundreds of times. With the precision of a champion, Jason launched forward, his movements fast and efficient. He dropped low, sweeping his leg in a perfect arc, aiming to take Foster off his feet. Then, impact. The moment Jason's shin slammed into Foster's leg, everything went wrong. Instead of folding under the pressure like every opponent he had faced before, Foster's stance held firm. Jason's leg crashed into what felt like solid steel, sending a shockwave of pain radiating through his shin. It wasn't just resistance, it was immovable. His breath hitched, his eyes widened, his mind screamed, "What the hell?" Before he could react, Foster moved. In a blur of motion, Foster broke stance, pivoted with lethal precision, and executed a counter sweep with terrifying speed. Jason barely had time to register the shift before his own feet were yanked out from under him. The world tilted sideways, and for the first time in his career, Jason Carter was airborne, completely out of control. Then came the impact. He hit the stone pavement hard, the force slamming the breath from his lungs. Pain exploded across his back and shoulders. His ears rang, his vision blurred. He tried to scramble up, but before he could react, Foster was already on him. A knee pressed firmly into Jason's sternum, pinning him without crushing him. It was precise, controlled, efficient. The once invincible champion was completely, utterly powerless. Jason Carter gasped for air, his chest heaving as he lay sprawled on the cold stone pavement. The pain in his back, his shoulders, and most of all his shin was immediate and unforgiving. He had spent his life in combat sports, but never, not once, had he felt an impact like that. His body screamed in protest as he tried to move, but before he could even think about getting up, a crushing weight pinned him down. Daniel Foster's knee rested against his sternum, not with brute force, but calculated pressure, enough to immobilize him without suffocating him. It was an expert restraint, executed with the kind of precision that only came from real-world combat experience. Foster's face remained unreadable, his breathing steady, his pulse calm. This wasn't personal. This wasn't even a fight. It was a tactical response to a threat. The crowd, once buzzing with laughter and curiosity, had fallen into stunned silence. The cameras were still rolling, but now no one dared speak. Jason's entourage, the same men who had laughed at Foster's stance just moments ago, stood frozen, their confidence draining by the second. Marcus, his cameraman, finally managed to stammer, "Holy shh!" but cut himself off, eyes darting between Jason and the guard. Colonel William Adams and Major Thomas Reynolds remained where they stood, completely unsurprised. They had seen this coming from the moment Jason opened his mouth. They knew. "This," Major Reynolds murmured, barely audible over the tense stillness, "is why we don't mess with the Queen's Guard." Two uniformed palace security officers rushed toward the scene, their movements quick and professional. Foster didn't flinch. He didn't tighten his hold, didn't apply more force. He just waited, composed, calculating, in control. Jason, still gasping, tried to process what had just happened. How? He had trained with the best fighters in the world. He had studied combat like a science. But in the span of 2 seconds, everything he thought he knew had been shattered. Foster spoke for the first time, his voice calm, measured, unwavering. "Sir, remain still. Palace security is approaching." Jason, still pinned, finally understood. This wasn't a man playing soldier. This was a warrior in ceremonial armor. And he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The cold stone beneath Jason Carter's back felt unyielding, but it was nothing compared to the weight of humiliation crushing him. His mind raced, replaying the moment over and over, the sweep, the impact, the sheer unstoppable force that had sent him sprawling. He had faced knockouts, brutal submissions, even broken bones in the ring, but nothing compared to this. This wasn't sport. This wasn't competition. This was real combat. Foster remained motionless, his knee pinning Jason with precisely enough pressure to prevent escape, but not enough to inflict unnecessary pain. His control was terrifying. He could have ended this in a dozen different ways, but he hadn't. He had responded with exactly the force required. No more, no less. The silence in the courtyard was absolute. The once rowdy crowd now stood wide-eyed and frozen, their laughter long gone. Some had even lowered their phones, as if realizing this wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was a lesson. Palace security reached them in seconds, their movements crisp and professional. Foster didn't react to their presence. He didn't need to. He had already neutralized the situation before they even arrived. With seamless efficiency, he released Jason and rose to his feet in one fluid motion. The moment the pressure lifted, Jason coughed, struggling to push himself up onto his elbows. His championship belt, once a symbol of his dominance, now felt meaningless. Major Reynolds stepped forward, his gaze steady as he addressed the onlookers. Many visitors come here thinking these men are simply ceremonial, that they stand here just for show. But make no mistake, they are not statues. They are soldiers. Foster remained silent, rifle back in position, returning to his stance as if nothing had happened at all. But something had. Jason Carter had learned a lesson the hard way. Stillness was not weakness. The power he had underestimated had knocked him flat on his back, and the worst part was, Foster hadn't even tried. Later, as Jason sat in a quiet security office, his shin throbbing from the impact, Foster entered, not in his ceremonial uniform but in military fatigues. This wasn't a man pretending to be a warrior. This was a warrior, through and through. Jason looked up, swallowing his pride. "I was wrong," he admitted. Foster gave a single nod. "Yes, you were. What do you think about what just happened?" Jason Carter walked in with the confidence of a champion, believing his years of martial arts training made him untouchable. But in just a few seconds, everything he thought he knew about combat was completely shattered. It wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about real-world experience, discipline, and control. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their appearance or underestimated their abilities? Maybe you've experienced a moment where reality hit you harder than expected. Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. Was Jason simply overconfident, or did he have a point about the differences between sport fighting and military combat? And if you were in his position, would you have realized the danger before it was too late? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Also, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have another jaw-dropping story that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Tap that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next video.